Life is complex, so is our mental health. It cannot be understood by diagnosis alone. Our philosophy is treat the person, not the mental illness. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Humanizing Mental Health. I am the suntanned Trenton Akers.
And I am the lily white Jeremy Alcorn.
Yeah. So if you haven't noticed, we are recording this in the dog days of August.
Sorry.
No, that's a really authentic response.
Cried. Yeah.
Okay.
And back again with us today is the wonderful Jolene Broussard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
How do you beat Lily White?
Well,
Snow Woman. Maybe, I don't know. I'm in the same boat.
Well, I think that you and I have that problem of we walk into the sun, we turn into a lobster, and then we peel.
Yep.
And then we walk into the sun and turn into a lobster again, and then we peel.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always say I'm in the sun, I'm red on the outside and white on the inside, like a lobster. Yeah.
Yeah. A rock lobster?
Yep.
Sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not comedy hour. We're just starting things off. And for those of you that may not know, Jolene is a returning guest, and we've talked about a lot of things related to disabilities in children and parents. And today we're going to be continuing that conversation, and we're going to be bringing up something very particular. Do you want to lead us in here, Jolene?
Sure. Thank you for having me back, first of all, because this is just my area of passion, and you guys have given me a platform to talk about it and talk about it with individuals who have working knowledge and lived experience as well as myself. So thank you. So today, we're going to kind of talk about those. You had mentioned, Trent, during our last sit down together that shortly after birth, you were wheeled into like the operating room. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think with some of the parents that I work with, even for myself, like, you know, kiddos just ending up in the NICU and you're not expecting it, those kind of things. But what about those big medical interventions that infants who come into the world need right away? And what's the impact of that on the attachment bond between parents and child? And how's it affected? And how do we help through that?
Yeah, and you know, I think it's really important that you bring that up and to just kind of set the scene. I'll tell you a story that my mother told me several times. Like as you mentioned, Jolene, like when I was first born, I needed surgery because I was born 28 weeks premature. Excuse me, I need to cough the sun out. And she talked about the fact that when I was born, like basically I was in the NICU and I was in an incubator. And she talked about going into that room basically where there's, for those of you that have never seen an incubator before, it's basically a large plastic clear plexiglass box that the infant would be in. And there's a bassinet inside of there. And there's areas for people to utilize gloves in order to touch and to be able to interact with the infant, but like on a there's still a barrier there. And my mother talked about way back in 1987 when she would do that. Like there was basically a room full of incubators, and that you would walk in there and they would be lined up. There would be areas for the parents, but that you weren't, like she said, you would go in there, you wouldn't make eye contact with the other parents. You would go to your child, you would sit there, you would be with your partner, and you would do the best you could to connect with your infant. And like as you think about that, like the level of stress and the need for the attachment there, because they're wanting to attach, but there's this necessary medical barrier because these children are struggling. They may not even be fully fully to term, so they're not even safe to be out in the world, but there's that need, that drive, that bond to attach with the parents. So it's really that juxtaposition between the two. Like, how do we appreciate the need for medical intervention, but also allow human beings' natural process to take place.
Mm-hmm. And I think as well, when I think about those situations and that natural process, it's about the stressors that are taking hold of the parents in that time. Also the child, the infant, that those stressors they're undergoing, their bodies are undergoing. But the lack of community that you have. I think of stories that I've heard from parents about how it's so lonely and isolating. And sometimes you're not even able to be in your own community to receive the care that your child needs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like if you even think about it, for Medistat, even though we're a larger community, a lot of these children get medevaced to Edmonton or Calgary. So I mean, because that's where the resources are. But it's not like you can have all of those people around you to support you to really help bring this child into the world. It's like then the child has to be brought back to the world itself.
Yeah. As I listen, a couple of things jump out. One of them is recognizing that without these interventions, these children would die. And the miracle that is there that gives the opportunity for life. And at the same time, the experience gets so medicalized, all of the emotional processes are not really necessarily honored within that medicalized system. And being able to know how is it that we bring that back, like you're saying, Jolene, about the parent. Well, the typical natural process would be parents that have gone through natural stressors, but a mom who has been flooded with endorphins in the process of birth, and actually oxytocin, which are these bonding agents, and the baby's nervous system responding to the mother's nervous system and knowing that they're okay and that they're at peace. And in these situations, when a baby is in such a difficult medical position, then those natural processes don't happen. We have a stressed mother, stressed father, and then a baby, even that distance of the incubator, even when you're touching them, you still are bringing distress into the situation.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Which is natural, but
yeah, and also you have to think about the environment too of the hospital, the sound of the machines, the stressed out nurses that are also trying to be there, returning them every hour, the lights. I mean, we've talked about the lights here in Synergy, but could you imagine my mother even talked about that when she eventually brought me home after so many weeks, because I was so attuned to the hospital cycle that she almost had to run or feed me and do different things on the hospital cycle, because that's what I was socialized for. That's what my body knew. And then it was about how do we then bring it back to something more natural. So it's not just about, parent operating on less than 3 hours sleep, but then it's also really deprogramming the child from living in the hospital.
And I would also venture to say too, I've never brought home a baby and had to have the experience of fear of losing them at that age right away. But also that fear, am I going to be able to do what this child needs me to do too, right? Your own stressors and questioning your own abilities. We question our abilities as a parent. I think it's natural from the get-go. But when you have more complications added to that, it just takes that stress threshold even higher.
Oh yeah, and and as you bring that up, I feel like I'm sharing a lot of stories today, but
this is good.
No. My mother talked about the fact that my parents wanted to take me camping, because that's one thing that we would do as a family. We did a lot of off-grid camping, but the thing is that at the time I was on an oxygen tank, and my father was trying to figure out a way to strap an almost pure oxygen tank to the back of the camper. And for those of you that don't, you guys are laughing, but
Boom.
yeah, exactly. So Dr. Folston, Dr. Charlotte Folston, who I believe she just retired. Like when she found out about that, she's like, okay, if you guys need a break, I will put him in the hospital like for like the weekend or the week. You guys go camping, get yourself collected, and then you can reconnect, because you have to try and mitigate risk, because we don't want it to be that kind of an explosive trip.
There's a trip people won't forget.
Right.
Like, what happened to your trailer? It's a pile of rubble.
Yeah.
Tried to breathe.
Yeah. Talk about open air camping.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But that brings up another point too, is about the when I say community, right? You don't have that community. Who's there to provide respite or relief or support when a lot of the times you're not in your community? You're the only ones. Like I've never had to have an infant in a NICU or born early, but who's there to help those parents and give them time off? And I can only imagine, like, it's hard for me to pull myself away when Genevieve went in for her surgery. So can you imagine a newborn and trying to take time to go do self-care? What's that?
Yeah, exactly. Or, I think of things like the Ronald McDonald House, which is wonderful. Like, you've got all of these parents and these families coming together, but also these are all people that are traumatized, that are struggling. There's nobody really within their window of tolerance except for the staff.
Yeah, for sure. Totally makes sense. And I think part of this conversation, at least one of the things that jumps out to me when you talk about parents are already in a place in which they question their ability, and we do so at every stage, I think, of the next stage a kid goes into, because we don't know how to deal with that next stage. But is the thing that really jumps out to me is this conversation maybe could be very helpful for parents, because they don't understand, why is my baby crying and can't be comforted? Or they understand, these struggles or these things that are happening with my child, it's not actually that there's something seriously wrong. It's that something maybe went a bit askew in how they were going to connect, and they don't know how to feel secure. That gives you something to do. You're like, okay, I can settle down. This is going to be okay. I need to understand what's happening and allow myself to be patient with the process. I gotta keep doing the things that my child needs, and eventually they'll figure it out, because if I understand what's going on, maybe I can settle down my own nervous system. Maybe I can be more calm.
Yeah,
because a child's not going to be calmed from an adult that is distressed.
Well, and the thing is, and I think what you're talking about there is really key, because I was actually talking with another practitioner a while ago, where we were talking about the loop of trauma when it comes to persons with disabilities and their parents. So the mother is traumatized, the baby is traumatized, and then it's about trying to settle the baby down, but then the baby is also triggered by the mother, which then gets re-traumatized, and it just keeps going and going.
For sure. It's a feedback loop that maintains the distress.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can go on throughout life, throughout every single stage, because, there again, too, as we know about trauma, those parts are locked in amber back to that part. So, it's not just the stress of first day of school. It's then that all gets brought back out. And then how can they truly move forward? Or are you just still caught in that first medical traumatized experience?
Yeah. And you had mentioned during our last podcast about how do you keep your child from disassociating during times of medical intervention, right? So at that point in time, that infant isn't going to, I don't know. I shouldn't say that. Can infants disassociate at that age?
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah,
Do you think so?
Yeah, they can. Like I've done.
Sorry, a dumb question maybe, but
well, and it's interesting. I'm glad for you to say that, because here we are. between us, we have what 50 years of experience or something close.
Don't give our ages away. Come on.
and yet, there's aspects of the details, that the minutia that maybe we don't know. But Trent, it sounds like you may have an answer.
Because I actually did some reading, and this was from Ego State Therapy, and they actually talked about a young woman that had gone through medical trauma, and they talked about the parts and the pieces at various ages where the baby was in distress and did start to disassociate, so those did become exiles. So because the thing is, you have to look at the fact that the ventral nervous system, like where we're connecting, is the newest one, but it's the dorsal that is the oldest, that of course is online initially. So disassociation would be the first thing that they would
because it's part
do.
of our old part of our nervous system.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You mean our reptile brain?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the reptile brain.
Yes, the lizard.
The lizard brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm either thinking of the character, the villain, the lizard from Spider-Man, or of course the Lizard King himself, Jim Morrison.
Oh. Very different references.
Sorry, no, that's just where my brain goes, people.
Yeah, fair.
And then you wonder, what is my therapist actually thinking in the middle of session?
I'm thinking about Spider-Man, if you're wondering.
It's I don't know. I'm just thinking about, can I slip in a reference here that will be meaningful?
We'll get there.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, but that is important in recognizing that then this little baby actually can be more of an ingrained or learned process from very young.
Mm-hmm. Which then can bring in, like you were talking about, the challenges later on that then become more intense and are not understanding, but that goes back to the body holding on to what the cognitive memory doesn't.
Right. Yeah. You said that really, really well, because we're so head first, so much that we're talking about working through our thinking processes. In fact, it reminds me, yesterday I had an appointment in which I was sharing the effects of trauma, and as the person then started to understand, then they just, and it was the first appointment, they just broke down crying, emoting, and I was able to just be with them to let them know this is a good thing. It's okay. It's okay. What's happening is your cognition, or your thinking part, is catching up with what your body has been trying to say for years and years, and your cognition hasn't understood. And it really comes to that healing process does involve our cognition, but it doesn't necessarily always start with our cognition.
Yeah. Sometimes we need to go bottom up first before we go top down.
Now, fascinating. Yeah. Because it can come from either side, right? It could come from a thought. It could come from a gut feeling, or changes in your heart, in which your heart starts beating or sending signals that are not understood by the cognition. Yeah.
And just to kind of circle back, and then you have a young infant that really doesn't have a lot of that understanding or that awareness. That's why we say we raise children, because we're raising them up. It doesn't have that capacity, so it's just going by instinct. So then how do you then really go back to that to that 1 or 2 day old infant to kind of comfort it? Because that's not something like where you can go and talk to that young child. You almost have to almost go back inside and almost create an area where you are the parent, providing the comfort that young self that you didn't get.
Yeah, in fact, those are almost my exact words to this person was, no one was with you in this before. But don't worry, this isn't going to last forever, and I'm with you in it now.
And even looking at parents now, because I work with that population of with younger children, and every behavior is an expression of need.
Yeah.
Right. So what are they expressing that they're needing? But through those, with some of those big extreme behaviors, especially in our medical kiddos, or just even kiddos that can't communicate effectively or don't know how to say, I'm hurting, I'm struggling, help me. It's trying to figure out where that piece, like you said, got detached or missed. Right. And I think medicine has really started to kind of take a look at that too, because they do now incorporate that skin to skin contact. That's really important, right? Even after those first days of coming out. And
Yeah. I almost, like, as we've been talking, the one thing that really pops into my head is those babies from the Russian orphanage back in the day. And I can see you shaking your head because, like with some of those infants, for those of you that don't know, this was during the Soviet era, and it was basically a large group of infants that needed to be cared for. And what they did basically is they warehoused them, so they wrapped them up tight. They gave them what we all consider to be your core needs. Like where they fed them, they wrapped them up, they put them in a bassinet, but they didn't engage with them. And what they actually found is with these infants that brain development was lower, and even in some circumstances, certain sensory organs didn't develop to the same amount, because you need that skin to skin, that engagement in order to stimulate these things. So you can provide people with food, clothing, and shelter, but if you don't provide them with community and self-actualization and connection, all of that doesn't matter, because you've got the building blocks of a human, but you don't have the human embodied.
Yeah, in fact, this reminds me of something that I think maybe you'll nail home this point a little bit and help us to transition our conversation a little bit. So really what you're describing is we are wired from the outside in. That internal self gets wired by our tribe, the people that we're connected to, and also the physical environment. So an example of this is that if an infant is left in a space, if they're in a spot where they are not exposed to light, and I'm sorry for forgetting the time frame, I'm not sure if it's a year, 18 months, but then that infant will be blind for the rest of its life. The genetic code will not get opened that develops sight.
The epigenetics.
So this literally is that idea that our genes are a library, and that the books get checked out by the environment. Now, interestingly enough, and where hope, I think, comes in this conversation, is that time-sensitive position of development of vision is the vast majority, almost all of our development is not time-sensitive. So that window of vision, it won't ever happen unless it happens at that time. But for the rest of our development, it's not like that. We could have something interfere or get in the way in our first 2 or 3 days or first few months of life. And that doesn't mean that we're going to be stuck with this developmental injury that's going to last our whole life. No, that's not true. The plasticity of our nervous system, of our brain, and other organs that carry that within our nervous system is very significant and can develop across the lifespan.
Absolutely. And, not to tout myself, but I think, if that injury was still inside of me, I wouldn't be doing the job that I am today. I wouldn't be the person that I am today. It's been slow work over time, working with therapists, working with, really developing a relationship with my parents. And I'm wondering one day if we can even go back and even talk about life transition. I think we've mentioned that before,
yes.
Where you transition from childhood to adulthood, and really talking about that. And my mother is not, she still carries her traumas with her, but she's not traumatized all the time. But it's about recognizing when that does come up.
Yeah, for sure. I think you bring a really good point. In my outside view of you, Trent, as a person, you're well adjusted. Does it mean that there isn't still effects in which there may be times in which a feeling may be bigger than what you would anticipate? Well, I imagine you still experience that at times. We even did a podcast that was about dealing with loss, right? And what that means. And I'm sure that this story that you're telling is relevant if listeners want to go back and listen to that dealing with loss, which was about a caregiver that had been connected for a very long time, that abruptly all of a sudden there was a breach in that relationship. You can go, this conversation is very relevant actually to those experiences. But in your day-to-day life, you don't sit there feeling abandoned all the time.
Oh, no. Yeah. Like, and that's the thing is that's why, like, that's why we talk about exiles, because exiles, like, they're not always there. It's just, they come up in those moments, in those environmental triggers. And that's where it's about having that kindness, that compassion, and being able to take those moments, if you can, and integrate.
Yeah. And integration is a big thing, and taking those moments of compassion and kindness. And I think it's also really important, and hope, Jeremy, you wanted to stress when we were brainstorming, what's the hope? Because we can't go here and say, there's nothing you can do to get over it, right? Like,
it's like,
we're
hey,
really helpful.
you know what? Here we are. We're telling you about these things, and basically, your kids are just screwed up, and they're never going to be better. Yeah. That's definitely not the message at all.
No, not at all.
No, we have to greet them where they're at and help them on the journey. And here again too, here's a Batman reference. Why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves back up. So, your child may have stumbled, and, you may have stumbled with them, but you can help yourself up, and you can help that child to stand and grow and learn from the stumble.
Yeah. And part of that is what we as therapists always talk about. I think I do. But I can honestly say I'm pretty bad at doing it, walking my talk sometimes, but I'm getting better, is that self-care. So those parents who are going through those experiences early after birth with their children need to still care for themselves.
Yeah, for sure. Like the old saying, you can't care for someone else if your tank is empty. Like, if you don't have any gas in the tank, then you can't bring a jerry can and fill someone else up because you don't got anything to give them.
Or or even you can't, if your plane is crashing, you have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And that notion that is like, I don't want to tell a parent, take care of yourself so that you can take care of someone else. What I would say is take care of yourself because you're worth it. And if you do that, it'll allow you to the ability to take some care of someone else, but really do it for yourself. Don't do this for someone else.
Well, if we're trying to do something for someone else, it's not sustainable, I've learned. Right? But if you do it for yourself, it's beneficial in so many aspects.
Sure.
So many ways. And I think one of the other things that came from the last podcast, my brother is a physiotherapist, and he listened and he was like, wow. Like, so, and he's very kind of, sorry, Joey, I'm going to throw you out there. He's kind of cynical sometimes, right? Like, oh, trauma. That's all I hear is trauma. But when we talked about the body holding on and the body remembering those things, I think it goes back to the importance of individuals in the medical field need to take just a little bit of time and do some of the historical information gathering when helping their patients, right? Like, what is the history here that could be causing or lingering or holding on? It's maybe not that the person doesn't want to get better. It's just something that's stuck.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to put your brother on.
Oh, he's awesome, but you can go ahead and
unnoticed.
Fry him.
But the thing is that I love physiotherapists. Like they've helped me out a lot. But there's been times when they will come, like where I've been assessed by physiotherapists, and they just come and they'll start like randomly manipulating my body, and like consciously I know what they're doing, but it's like that's where my startle reflex comes in. And when you just start having people, and they're like, "Wow, you've got a lot of spastic tone," and it's like, yeah, but at the same time too, let me calm down, let me get in my window of tolerance, and then you'll be able to see my full range. Sorry.
Totally. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And for a second, Joe, I felt like Gabor Mate was sitting next to me.
Oh, yay! I take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Because because that's one of the foundational things he says, right? Is he says the biggest mistake that physicians are making is they're not asking people what happened in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What happened to you?
Yeah.
I believe it's a book by Oprah and Bruce Perry, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, something akin to that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that one I haven't checked out for some reason. I have no idea why. Any hoodles?
Yeah.
Of the 3,000 books you've read.
Yeah.
I know it's not actually 3,000, but
No, well,
I wonder though.
2,000 and some.
Yeah.
no, there you go.
Because sometimes our bodies are going to relay or make us become aware of the things that we don't want to be through physical presence of change, right? So stressors can come across as heart attacks or angina or,
Or actually can cause them
or
eventually.
can cause them. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Like if it
the
sits in that
correlation. Yeah.
distress too long,
Yeah.
then you hear doctors talking more about stress when there's already been an event.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh yeah, your heart's not working very well. You need to really reduce your stress in your life. Yeah, that's a correct message, and you should have got that 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and then you may not have actually had the heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know, okay, I have to. Have you heard of the breathwork sessions that we do here at Synergy?
Holotropic breath work.
Thank you. I can never. I can never think about how to pronounce that. Thank you, Jeremy. And I often wonder for myself, because lungs were such a major issue, and for a lot of people with disabilities, like especially if you're born premature, what would that be like? And I'm almost thinking to myself, would that trigger something for me in terms of the trauma reaction
Interesting.
deep inside?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Like as we talk about ways in which people then heal, ways in which they develop, part of that, because the initial injury for the child was interpersonal, I actually think the answer is also interpersonal in terms of how they begin to relate in between them and their tribe and the world around them.
Yeah.
But also, like you say, there's these physical aspects that may be left over for yourself having diminished lung capacity. And that's interesting. If you did a session of holotropic breath work, if maybe you might open some very deep things.
Yeah, well, I almost think because you do it as a group.
Yeah.
Like, what would that be like to put my lungs and my nervous system under that kind of stress, but then to do that with other people? Would that almost be an attachment repair?
Maybe. So as we talk about this, giving a little bit of information. So this is a method that is used for people to get into a trance-like state. The background of it was when LSD and the other psychedelics became illegal and all of the research stopped, then people actually looked for another method to get into that same journey trance-like state. So just context for our listeners.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate the asterisks.
I even wonder, though, if something like that, like we talk about prematurity and the lungs are the last to develop, right?
Mhm.
So we know that the lungs are an issue, but what about even individuals most recently who would have had COVID? Where the lungs would have been
Fascinating.
damaged.
Yeah, sure. And that long COVID experience
Yeah.
for some people that are just kind of ongoing,
Yeah.
diminished ability to breathe.
Mhm.
So when, because I'll have clients sit in my office and I'll say, well, let's do some mindfulness and breathing. And they're like, I don't want to breathe. Now I'm like, let's
the way
look
you
back
said
at
that.
the medical history here and I don't want to breathe. What's related?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, what's the relationship between the lungs and breathing?
Because the way you said it, I thought you were seeing a lot of smokers. Sorry.
No. That's okay.
just the way you shifted your.
I don't wanna breathe.
I don't want to breathe.
Yeah.
No, okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Like all I can think of is like the Marlboro Man now. And here's the interesting thing. I was working with a client the other day, and he's a smoker, and he talked about basically like when you breathe in with cigarettes, how you hold that breath, and he's doing that now, and like now that helps him understand box breathing. So instead of having a cigarette, he's just doing, like he calls it, like his cigarette breathing to help calm him down.
Yeah, I've heard that before too. That some people went, actually, me stepping out to have a cigarette I took a break, and I actually was breathing in a specific way, and I could remove the cigarette and still do those things. So yeah, and as we kind of drift through some different kind of aspects of this, really recognizing the reason we're talking about this is because we're talking about ways in which people heal, and how it is that they begin to reset a place of security in themselves. That whatever that was that interrupted that could have been not even just someone being in an incubator. It could have been some other things that happened right at birth. But of course it could be other things that happen across the lifespan too.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter if it happens at birth or when you're an adult. It's still a rupture, it's still a repair. It may just be more ingrained when you're younger.
Yes, exactly, because we don't necessarily have the cognitive memory associated with those very early years up until usually that memory formation is somewhere along the time where people form language, and then our memories change in terms of images and thoughts that are associated with them. And so if there's something that's pre-verbal, then there may be that deeper, less tangible way to get at it. So yeah,
and that secure base, I think, can definitely be there despite obstacles, right? But it's about being present, being in a way of knowing how to be and provide that secure base. But like you said, you have to be the calm to somebody else's storm, right? And sometimes that's really hard to do if we're in a storm as well. Because what happens when two storms collide?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've got a weird question.
That was a really great metaphor. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and I didn't mean to cut you guys off. I just thought about persons with disabilities and children, that what happens if they get adopted as children or as very young children, because and then how does that complicate things too as well with the attachment with the adopted parent?
Sure, because no matter what you do, not that people can't be well adjusted, people adopted, that's entirely true. It's that no matter what you do, there is an attachment breach when an adoption occurs. Yeah. And then really, what does that new formation look like? And you bring about a good point for someone, say, that was born with additional medical struggles and the medicalization of those struggles and then is adopted. Yeah.
I was talking with one of our brilliant psychiatrists here in town, Dr. Becker, the other day about our podcast and what we were talking about and the progression of where we're going with things. And she brought to light too, she says that, if you look at the medical field, because I said, healing hurts, whether it hurts emotionally, physically, healing hurts, plain and simple.
You can't heal if you don't feel.
Exactly. And she was like, oh yeah. And she's like, and she uses the term burden of health, because with health, there's burdens, and emotional and feeling and physical pain, I think, would be connected to that. But it's also about the access to health and to getting healthy and to getting those helps, right? Like the burden regarding financially, location, all of those other things that come into play there. And it's like, how does this all impact all of these things that we're talking about, whether you're adult, child, but with individuals with disabilities, that burden of health becomes bigger.
Sure. Yeah.
Or sometimes like it can almost become like our primary job.
Yep.
Yeah. And, and like the other way. I think you and I have talked about the fact that, you know, I'm not just in private practice, but I also run my own caregivers, and people will say to me, "Oh, well, you're so well managed, or how you take such good care of yourself." And the thing is that as a child, you know, like my mother had to manage all of these things, and now as an adult, it's like if I want to, you know, get a shower, get my nails cut, do all of those different things, it's about interfacing with people, and so that in itself takes a level of responsibility. And sometimes too, you'll find with some people with disabilities, or at least I have, where they just want to live their lives, so they'll let certain things slip, and you can even say to yourself, well, why aren't they doing this, why aren't they doing that? But at the same time too, that's, you know, it's a choice to engage, and also it's a choice not to engage, and you need to honor that.
Yeah. So I feel like our conversation is kind of coming to a natural place of winding up, and I'm really interested about, you know, what as participants in the podcast, about what has, you know, resonated with us, and I guess I'll start. One of the biggest things that jumped out to me as we went through this conversation was really the position for parents to be able to, one, understand that in order for their child to be able to be settled, that an unsettled nervous system isn't going to be able to settle a child. So hopefully being able to hear some of the things we have to say and come to an understanding about one of the reasons why their children would be having some of the struggles they have allows them to let go of any self-blame or things that they feel like they're not doing right, and be able to, as was mentioned, Joe, to be able to take that time to care for themselves. And then they can bring that regulated nervous system in to work with that child. And the likelihood that the child is going to heal and that those struggles will diminish greatly is high. And that child will then get what it needs to develop, and no parent will be perfect in that. So, yeah, that's my takeaway.
I love that summary, Jer. I think you've hit on a lot of the major points. I really appreciated going through all of this with the both of you. I think that this was a very productive conversation. I wrote down here, and I think for me that this kind of encapsulates my takeaway from this, where you said healing hurts. And I think that that's something that, you know, people with disabilities, all people, need to recognize that you need to go through the pain, you know, and have those people around you, that the pain is temporary, like you said, Jared, and that we can move through it together. But there is hope at the end if you're willing to engage.
Mm-hmm. And I think for me, the takeaway is that community is still so important and still so vital for not only infants, parents, but as we move more through globalization and travel and bigger things, we still need that connection with others and extended family members. Like, things are so important, and relationships are so important and vital to be able to provide ourselves the ability to feel and to have time to calm our storms, to be able to help others weather theirs. So it's about reaching out, saying, I think there's more strength in saying, I need help than persevering on your own.
Both are important, to be able to have inner strength, but also have the strength enough to ask for help.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance. And I hope that this podcast today for our listeners has not only given them some insight, but maybe this will help you on your path to balance, whatever that may be.
Yeah. So thanks again, Jolene, for joining us.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
And on that note, I'm Jeremy Alcorn.
I'm Trent Akers. See you next time.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope that this message has been as meaningful to you as it has been to us. If you're looking for help, you can find us on Facebook at Humanizing Mental Health.